Yes!
Hey.
Exactly at the right time. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hi, guys. How you doing?
How lovely to see you both. We had a very crazy week this week, so we thought we'd do an extra little mess because some of the stuff that happened was just so extraordinary. What should we start with?
Well, I would like to start by saying Artie's got a new item behind him, and I wanted to say that's a very pretty item that you have behind you, Artie.
Oh, thanks. It's dead.
What a wonderful symbol of the show.
Nice.
What's dead? What are we talking about?
It's a plant. It's a dead plant, but it's pretty. And that's what matters.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes. In death, it's shining in a way that perhaps it didn't quite in life. I don't know why I'm
going to make a note not to mention it
my
next time.
epitaph for sure.
So
my
listen,
tombstone was much shinier than my life.
So listen, what an insane week. Where should we start?
Oh my goodness! I mean, so much has happened.
I think Levine is the most incredible thing. Levine's answer to Rand Paul and the reaction to it, don't you think?
The reaction is even more shocking. The sheer everybody is officially brainwashed. We are living in body snatchers now. Like
let me fill people in. Let me fill people in before you say. Basically, what's their first name? Levine.
Rachel
Levine. Rachel Levine is the Biden administration's pick for assistant health secretary, and Rand Paul, who's I believe a very right wing or at least libertarian figure in America, asked Levine. I'm being very careful. Asked Levine, given that Keira Bell had a successful case where she is suing the Tavistock and blah 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 blah, and asked just incredibly reasonable, rational questions. Robbie, do you know more about the questions than me? Do you remember the exact?
No, because I didn't do any research because this is just our fun day.
This is our fun one.
I mean, he basically said, "Do you agree with giving minors puberty blockers, and that then leads on to double mastectomies, etc." He was quite hard hitting. He had his research, he had his question, and it was a very long question, and he went through it, but none of it I thought was particularly unreasonable. In fact, I was, again, I'm like, this is Rand Paul chap. But anyway, the answer was amazing twice. I'm very much looking forward to working with you. That wasn't the question. This is this is like my asking, should male-born people be going to changing rooms? And I get a complete sort of stock answer that, cubicles. And you're like, but that wasn't the question.
Yeah, and also Levine said a complete lie, which is that transgender medicine is very well researched and very, there's lots of studies into it. Totally untrue, because as we all know, scientists are harassed and bullied whenever they attempt to look into these things, driven out of their jobs, and there's a chilling effect, and so there's no research into these things. So Levine just flat out lied, first of all, but did the same thing, did that thing of, I'm very much looking forward to, just did not answer the question. And the question was the kind of question you would hope an education secretary would be able to answer, because he was asked him, he was compared it to female genital mutilation and said, we are opposed to female genital mutilation when it happens, in other countries. Why aren't we opposed to the same thing here? And this Levine character just kind of flubbed. Not flubbed. Actually, it wasn't a flub.
It was an absolute stock answer. The stock answer. Whatever question he was going to ask, that was the stock answer, because he followed it up. And Levine answered exactly the same thing. I'm absolutely astonished. That's one thing I thought, that they might get the job simply for the brazenness of clearly evading the question. I mean, he even said, well, you've completely evaded the question there.
It was
the same answer again.
And at the end of it, Rand Paul said, let the record show that the witness failed to answer the question twice. And as soon as he stopped speaking, the chairperson, whoever was chairing it, said, "Thank you for answering the question."
What planet are we on? This is like the entire, I don't know what this person's credentials are. I think they were the health secretary in Pennsylvania, in the state of Pennsylvania or something. But it just seems like this is just a garden variety. There are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of executive health professionals in the United States. This person is clearly a token choice because they're an autogynephilic middle-aged transsexual. And like, this person doesn't seem to know how to answer questions. This person doesn't seem to know anything. And then what pisses me off is this person is clearly not the kind of transsexual who's honest and open about transsexualism. This is the kind that's like totally in denial, you know?
But also, why are the right wingers the ones that we're having to rely on to ask these questions?
And then another thing happened, which Robbie alluded to earlier. Sorry, I used a fake name for early morning, which Artie alluded to earlier, which is that the media immediately did that thing where all the walls came down. It's like, you know, it's like something, I don't know, like a secret base where that just kind of sinks into the sea or something. And the media, like they did things like the Washington Post only showed a small section of it. So when I saw someone in the Washington Post saying the question was ignorant, I'm sorry, but the question was more knowledgeable.
The question was spot on, man. The question was spot on. If you're going to say the question was ignorant, you have to be able to show how. You have to say because it shows. I mean, because it shows that there's been no, you know, they don't understand this or that. But that's not what happens. It's just the question is ignorant.
And then there's like the part that's the introduction to your sentence, you know, and then you're supposed to actually provide the substance, you know, that's the opening sentence to your essay. But you forgot the essay. You just wrote the opening sentence and walked away, you know.
I will say one thing, though. This, you know, I mean, obviously, this is true as well. Bell is never mentioned in any of the reporting on that exchange. They wouldn't dare. You know, they know that would open a can of worms they don't want to open. But here's the thing: the right do only have themselves to blame for this in a weird way, because we've just had 4 years of these kinds of tactics being used by Trump.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so you could see the frustration on Rand Paul's face when this person wouldn't answer them. But you know, it's just what Trump did all the time. You know,
yes, and they allowed it, Yeah, and they allowed it,
and so what's happened is the Democrats and the Republicans between themselves have agreed that facts just don't matter anymore.
Yeah, you know, you don't have to answer the question. You can completely ignore the question and say something like, "It's like yes."
It was mental. It's like one of those things where you think you're going mad. You think you're going mad.
When they said the same thing the second time, I was like, just answered exactly the same way. And neither time was it at all relevant to the question.
Yeah, but I'm even more furious at the editorial, the flurry of all these pieces, all the stupid hot takes coming out about how obscene the question was, you know, that the Washington Post, the New York Times, every single outlet is just pushing this idea that it was so out of bounds to ask a reasonable question about literally the most important medical health issue of the times. Pediatric transgender health and a newly about to be appointed transgender assistant health secretary. This is the most critical question, and to even ask it is an act of outrageous bigotry. This is insane. But it's another one of these examples of where editors, they just, you know, the transgender issue, they just let any trans person say whatever the hell they want, you know?
Yes.
That's a very good point. In fact, not only do they let trans people say whatever they want, they hire the most insane trans people. Kirst E is an absolute psychotic loon who tweets about pissing on the seats in women's toilets. They work for The Independent. Yeah. Emily Gorensky is a gun nut who works for The Guardian.
Well,
you know?
So Emily Gorensky wrote one article for The Guardian, I think.
But still, on the web,
but still on The Guardian
website. These lunatics
that one was, yes, but this is, I mean, I'm actually getting quite frightened now, because what Emily Gorensky said, so some chap asked, and he was a chap, said, you know, basically, these British women, these British feminists are getting a bit out of hand. What can we do in the US to counter these British feminists? And Emily Gorensky says, guns. We've got guns. Yeah. And everyone's like, hang on, that's really bad. That's incitement to violence. Reports to Twitter, and Twitter's like, nah, we're all good. We're all good there. I was absolutely shocked to the core to see Gorensky tweet very next day, Twitter's reply saying, no violation of hateful conduct rules here, by saying guns. We've got guns that we can use against transphobes. And we know who the transphobes are in this equation. And we know that it's mainly women. And but we know that it's mainly women.
But that's still wild. So
Twitter is now allowed, I mean, I think not only have they allowed Gorensky to incite violence against women, I think Twitter themselves, they're complicit. They are inciting violence against women because they're saying, yes, these women, ban them for hateful conduct. Hateful, right? Hateful conduct, which then gets translated into hate speech. It's hate, they're haters. And then Gorensky is like, yeah, we got to use guns against these haters, man. This is, this is war. This is just like, this is war. And Twitter are complicit here, I'm afraid. And that Dino Man tweet is still up, where he says, fuck TERFs to dinosaurs with guns. Fuck TERFs. And that's, again, inciting violence against women. Honestly, in fact, I'm going to make a note now. I'm going to report Twitter to the FBI for this. I'm going to make a note to do it after this. No, I'm serious.
Because in any other movement, the FBI would be on that.
I hope you did.
The FBI would absolutely be on that. But the thing is, like, I forgot what I was...
Right, report Twitter to FBI.
I'm angry about everything.
That's going to be awkward. You forgot what you were going to say. No, but we know, there's an interesting thing that you see a lot of the kind of excuses for these expressions of male violence are really interesting. When I remember I would post about the baseball bats people would baseball bats and trans
and barbed wire. And barbed wire, don't forget.
But baseball bats, barbed wire, and trans activism are like cookies and cream. They just go together. You see them all the time. And all these kind of handmaidens and trans rights activists and celebrity trans rights activists, they all had the same prepared answers, which was, that was an art exhibition. Or my favorite, they're just fighting back against this epidemic of violence which doesn't actually exist.
Which doesn't exist. Oh my God. Did you see on the Human Rights Watch today or whatever, Human Rights Campaign?
No.
The gay rights one, where they were like, there was a horrible tragedy in the United States where a mother who had a mental breakdown. Did you see this? She killed her 2 children.
Yes, I did.
Very sad.
Yes. Horrible.
But one of the children happened to be a trans-identified female to male teenager. And then they just this activist group seized upon the death of one teen, ignored the circumstances, that it was the mother who did it, had a nervous breakdown, ignored that both children were killed, and just were like, look, it's a tragedy of trans death. And it's just like terrorizing trans kids into thinking that everyone had to kill them.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was an absolutely disgusting report for so many reasons.
Here's one key reason.
But for not mentioning the girl. But not mentioning
the other girl.
Here's my thing about that. Here's what's so egregious about that. They don't mention the girl when women, more than any other group, are targeted and are the subject of male violence. But they mention, the trans person when trans people are not in danger. There is what were the statistics on when Scotland did their Day of Trans Remembrance? 0 trans people were killed
in the history of the Republic. Yeah,
0.
Ireland too. I think it's since
it's a great thing, isn't it?
Single person ever. Yeah,
it's a great thing. That should be a day of celebration. Actually,
yeah, it should be. Yes,
but it isn't true. That all of this isn't true. But I was, honestly, I know I say, I was really shocked. And it's like, my level of being really shocked seems to just go up and up and up. And it never, as we think, at some point, it's going to explode and everyone is going to look around and is going to say, fuck, the rainbow is cleared and I can see clearly now that there's a problem. But that's not really happened. It's just my level of astonishment just keeps on going up. And this was one of them. When I read that story and I got to the bit about the dreadful circumstances that the mother had killed these 2 children, and it is dreadful. I mean, it is really, I mean, it's such a horrible tragedy. But that spin just, it was like spitting on them, really. It didn't seem to care. Yeah. It was such an obvious using it for advantage, and which is such a dreadful thing to do.
I've never felt a stronger feeling of, my God, the media really are the enemy now. I mean, they are lying to our faces, you know. Yeah. And you cannot get a fair hearing.
No, like there's body snatchers. We really are. Now that Trump is over, and now that the United States media is going to start looking into this issue, holy shit! It's just outright blatant dishonesty. You know. Yeah.
Do you think that's going to ever break? Do you think? I noticed something this week. Glenn Greenwald, who is full of fire and fury about American liberals when it suits him, but he is one of these TWAW people, and he doesn't seem to. He's another one of these people who doesn't seem to register when women are speaking to him and telling him there's a problem. It doesn't seem to. He can't seem to hear it. It's like there's just something happening, but he doesn't know what it is.
Too high pitched.
Yeah, too high pitched. That's it. Your high pitched, annoying voices aren't registering to him. Yeah,
your shrill feminist register is just like.
But he's so close. He's so close. He writes these tweets like he did this. He found out these statistics that we've been saying for years, which is that straight people are now, identifying their way into the LGBT community, just as I did with her, which I still have I still have a profile with them, and it's not going very well, to be honest, because the only people interested seem to be other trans-identified males, and I didn't join for them. I wanted to meet women. It's that simple. But he pointed out the kind of increased numbers of LGBT people is because of straight people. Because straight people are calling themselves Two-Spirit or whatever the fuck, and they're dancing at Pride, and hey, we're all one of the things that I got.
But we used to dance at Pride as allies. And it was such a great thing to do. Go along, a celebration of that day. And it was such a brilliant parade. It was just wonderful. And we felt that, we could be there as allies, just to say,
I love
it's
the allies.
Great. It's all good. It's all good. We accept you.
It was
for
the
who
allies.
you are.
It's the only thing I liked. I liked the parade because you'd see parents and families coming out to cheer on the gays, and I would cry. I couldn't stand the Pride Parade because I'm a little bit over that. But I loved seeing the families and the allies and seeing the support. It just made me well up with so much emotion. But even now, it chokes me up a little bit how far we've come. But now it's literally straight people. Debbie Hayden wrote a great piece dissecting that whatever they call it. There was that Gallup research poll thing.
Mm-hmm. Go on. That said what?
That said that there's just a huge spike in numbers of people identifying as LGBT, but they're all B or T or Q, and L is just completely on the down. And that none of this makes any sense. I think the vast majority of people who identify as B you have always ended up usually in opposite sex marriages or civil partnerships. Although there are certainly many Bs who are much more in alignment with the L's and G's than the S's, but it just seems like now it's just like
this is like an episode of Sesame Street.
I'm just trying to work it out.
Yeah.
So it's just this is just an epidemic of heterosexuals identifying into
and if I may say, Artie, the other statistic that is very interesting is that, and I've mentioned it before, but for the first time in years, LGBT acceptance has gone down amongst college-age American kids. So, in other words, the more straight people who are barging into these spaces and saying, "I'm queer," the less people like them. The less people like LGBT. And the thing is, the most outrageous thing about it is they're not even complaining about LGBT people. So the statistics about college age kids have been reported as, oh, what's happening? Everyone's getting more right wing, and it's not true. They just don't like these demanding, narcissistic straight people who are barging their way into these spaces.
Oh, it's so out of control, but it's really interesting. So I just had my sort of 1 year anniversary as Artie Morty recently. It was about a year and a couple days ago that I first, said, fuck it, I'm going to go on YouTube and show my face and talk about this stuff. And
make your fortune.
Taking $17.33 I made on, thank you so much, YouTube. But the tone seems to have massively changed. Taking stock a year later, you both have been involved in this publicly for much longer than I have. But God, this year things have changed dramatically over the last year, haven't they? It just feels like, on the one hand, the press is even more hostile, like you were saying, Helen. But on the other hand, there's a really, really growing, now it's swelling backlash. Graham just published an amazing interview with a 19-year-old in South Africa, and she's just like straight talk express. She's just like, this is, but
you know what I love most?
Dicks. They're being irresponsible. This is nonsense. I'm 19. I'm using my critical thinking, and I can see right through this. And the adults are acting like babies, and I've had it. And I was just like,
she's incredible. But the great thing about it as well is that she didn't need any help to get there. She was completely involved in the whole Tumblr SJW scene, and then she said she went over to the anti-SJW scene, and she said it was worse. And now she's just, at 19 years old, is just someone who has got like an iron rod for a spine, and will not be told. And I always said this. I always thought that, one of my theories about all this stuff is, I think that there are waves of certain things. And just as in the 60s, the hippies came along and thought, we can just take off our shoes and walk around and everything will be great, and all you need is love and stuff like that. And it was attractive, and everyone thought, oh yeah, maybe they're onto something. I don't know, yeah, maybe they're onto something. And all celebrities and journalists loved it, and it was great. And then people would pick up hippies and give them lifts, and it was just brilliant. And then the Manson family killed a load of people, and it was all over. It was all over. But what I find frightening about this is that there are many equivalent stories. I mean, I'll give you one. I'm just about to do a piece on someone called Eli Ehrlich, I think their name is. Eli Ehrlich is a trans-identified male, and is the most extraordinary tales of abuse, absolutely appalling tales of abuse. His treatment of women. Oh my God! One woman killed herself, who was one of his victims. And the thing is, I asked a friend, JL, who does the War on Women, to write it up, and the stuff I sent her a bunch of materials. But the thing about the materials that's really, really depressing is all these kids around the same age who are trying to call it out, who are trying to say, this person is dangerous, we need to take care of this person. They're all calling him she and her. They're all doing it. And not only that, but one of the people one of his victims is a trans-identified girl. So it's actually a woman, and they're calling him he. They're calling the victim he.
It's so confusing.
It's so confusing. So people who are looking on, it's like, for the way I describe it, it's like someone is drowning and they're shouting fire. You do not know what to do. You do not know how to help.
But we've talked about this before, haven't we? It's the same as the idea of reading the word red that's printed in blue ink, and this is the same. And this is the same as seeing Emily Gorensky say, guns. You think, oh well, it's a woman. No, it's not. This is male violence. This is male violence writ large and in your face. And Twitter's like, no, they can say it because their name is Emily.
Oh,
and they're talking
because their name is Emily.
About women.
It gets even worse though when the victim is also trans-identified. Like the Black Trans Lives Matter. Who was the person who had sort of organized the Black Trans Lives Matter organization? And then they remember. Do you remember this story? They were
the male who ran. Sorry, I zoned out there for a quick while.
The Black Trans Lives Matter. The leader of a Black Trans Lives Matter organization was a male to female, was having consensual sex with a female to male, and then during the sex, he took off the condom and proceeded to rape her. And publicly said, "Yeah, I did it because I was going to make non-binary babies. This is how you make non-binary babies: take an MTF and an FTM and sexually assault her." And she was very sorry. See, this is where it gets confusing.
Yes, it gets confusing
because both of their pronouns are swapped, and that just changes the sense of the dynamics of what's going on here.
Yep.
And wasn't it just a few months after that happened? This was still when Obama was in the White House. You forget how long Black Lives Matter has been around. This person went to the White House and shook hands with the first family.
God. But I remember there was a ton of excuses made for them all over. There was, they said,
Chernobyl, someone said in that. Thank you, Chernobyl.
And there was such a lot of excuses made. Lords, it was dreadful to watch.
Under no circumstances should somebody who has publicly declared that they just raped a woman be welcomed weeks later into the White House with no repercussions whatsoever. But that is the rohypnol of pronouns,
Yeah. That's why I there are people who I really have great respect for in this who are Debbie Hayden and Miranda Yardley and stuff like that. But Miranda Yardley, I know, insists on male pronouns, which I think is very brilliant of him. But Debbie, I think sometimes uses them female pronouns and I believe once asked her students to use female pronouns. I'm not sure if they would still do the same now. But the thing is, I will not use male pronouns, even or female pronouns, even with allies, because I cannot participate.
But it isn't a reward, is it? It's not a reward. It's the you have to. It's because otherwise things are obscured. As Artie saying, it completely changes the power dynamic.
I can't participate in that mass gaslighting that's going on. That has fooled even people like, people in the House of Lords. There was an amazing moment in the House of Lords where someone said, "I'm afraid, man, this is a woman who's coming to the end of her life." Baroness Barker, I think it was. Is that her name? Coming to the end of her life, and she says, "I'm afraid man can get pregnant because a trans man can get pregnant." It's like, don't you understand that you're just calling a woman by a different name? Do you not understand how you're tricking yourself into saying stupid things?
Well, yes, it's like
smart people.
Yes, but it's like that mantra, isn't it? It's the mantra: trans women are women. It's not about asking, do you actually believe fundamentally that trans women are literally women? It's basically about saying, are you prepared to accept? Are you prepared to publicly say that you accept this new definition of the word woman? I.e., are you prepared to say, yes, the word woman doesn't actually mean enough for me to use its proper definition, and I'm willing to go along with your new definition on it. That's what it is actually asking. It's simply asking, are you prepared to change the meaning of the word?
When I first came out and decided to start talking about this properly, that was the first kind of barrier that was erected in front of me. People would say, "Do you think trans women are women?" And I would always say that, I would always say the same thing: define trans women, define women.
Right, yes. What do you mean? I mean, what's your definition of woman here?
And that was like in itself was considered an evil thing to do, and it's
and then down the road you realize that pretty much everything you say is now considered evil. So you might as well throw caution to the wind.
Yeah, exactly. Someone here's an interesting statement from someone. Oh dear. Okay. Yeah.
But this person here is actually a person who felt that it was completely reasonable to continue to constantly send me pictures of phallic objects.
Really?
So this is a person who felt that it was absolutely fine, and another person that we have spoken about on many occasions were like, it's completely fine to send a woman unsolicited pictures of phallic objects to mock them because they care about female safeguarding.
So a self-hating misogynist, in other words.
Well, it's just misogyny, just absolute rank misogyny. And sort of sexual humiliation of women. It's absolutely, the whole thing is disgusting.
Yeah. Anyway, look, let's lighten the mood. What can we?
This was meant to be a fun one.
This is a fun one. It's angry fun.
I'm going to get rid of this lunatic.
Yes, get rid of that person.
Yeah. Did anyone? Has everyone seen? I'm going to do a quick segue into movies. I'm not sure if I've spoken about it, but has everyone seen Baby Teeth?
Oh no, I've only started it. No. I haven't finished it.
It is extraordinary. It's one of the best films I've ever seen. It's brilliant because there's no woke shite in it. It's absolutely, it's so moving, and it's so multi-layered and so textured. I really, really recommend everyone watch it as soon as you can. If it's you will thank me. It's just gorgeous.
I'm just going to put that. I'm just going to make a note under report Twitter to FBI. Watch Baby Teeth.
Watch Baby Teeth.
Watch Baby Teeth. Oh, and Call My Agent is very good, which I never expected that to be good. But
was that the French one? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. It's very moving, very, very moving and unexpected.
Watch. God.
Yeah.
I'm just really upset because my favorite movie of all time, this beautiful gay romance from a couple years ago called Call Me by Your Name. Just love I live in this movie. Live in it. I watched it probably 30 times. There's supposed to be a sequel, but of course one of the stars turns out to be a cannibal. So I guess that means the sequel's not going to happen. I am
I don't know. They'll think of something.
That's the kind of statement that makes me feel like I'm going senile. Did he say? What did you say?
You heard about Armie Hammer and his whole cannibal.
Well, I was going to say, Armie Hammer.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Don't kink shame.
Yeah.
Don't kink shame.
No, you're
By
right.
the way,
the kink shaming thing. What about the whole adult baby furry thing that we saw?
Oh God, there's two. In the last 48 hours, there have been two. There was a YouTuber who was running a daycare. Red alert. Turns out to be a pedophile, was in possession of really, really disturbing, from the journalistic description of it, child pornography. And then, of course, that insufferable assigned male, that comic artist who would always draw these insufferable cartoons of these little trans girls who are always looking so sad and pouty and like.
Oh, the ones with the really, really big clitoris. So big that it might be considered a penis.
It's the grossest thing. By the way, an elementary school teacher, that guy. An elementary school teacher.
When you keep referring to yourself as a trans girl, maybe people should listen. Because you weren't saying you were a trans woman. You were saying you were a trans girl. It was right in front of us the whole time.
Yeah.
I'm afraid there's quite a lot of that, though, isn't there? Which I find. I mean, because I've been banned from Twitter. I get, for some reason, I've been reading Medium because I've got nothing else to read, and because I've honed in on a couple of sort of trans stories. Honestly, every day now I get a whole load of other stories, and there's quite a lot I've noticed of girl. I'm a girl, and that, I mean, honestly, it's just so horrible, isn't it? It's so so many reasons.
But that really gives you a kind of insight into. I've got a writer working on the website, Genevieve, who's in the chat, and Genevieve, I sometimes worry about her because she really does deep dives into all this stuff. We've got something coming up about Amazon recently banned a book by a guy who wrote a very serious kind of consideration of what's going on with the trans thing. And they banned this guy, and yet they have all these extraordinarily gross erotic fiction about trans porn, basically. And the thing is, the thing that's kind of you notice that's all the talk. So when you hear girl, it shows it up as a paraphilia. It shows it up as a fetish. It's not that they think they're women; it's that they want to be girls. And obviously, this isn't true of everyone. This is a very, the autogynephiles who really enjoy this stuff. But I find it really, really frightening in a way, because I think that I think rightly we've been very worried about young girls in the last few years who, for me, it seems, are escaping pornography by having double mastectomies and all that, horrific stuff. But I do think that young boys are the next battleground, because young boys are escaping into pornography. You know, they're visualizing themselves as the object of desire, as well as getting aroused by desiring it.
I honestly think there's something very, very bad brewing.
I tell you what it is. Like I mean, I you know, have definitely once or twice happened upon a pornography site, but one thing I notice is that you see captions, and the captions are obviously written. It's quite sweet sometimes, because the captions are obviously written by teenage boys, right? But the captions are written in the voice of the women. But they're saying things like, "I want to take your whole load down my throat," stuff that I just don't think women tend to say. But like it's like written in that way. So what's happening is they're creating a feedback loop where they're kind of amplifying a kind of male version of desire that has nothing to do with women. Yeah. Nothing to do with women. And as a result, I think that they're only going to be able to get the kind of stuff they want from other men, other autogynephilic men, you know. So I think that you're getting a very confused generation of people who are not straight, not gay, not bi, but are going down some very weird holes where they're being kind of
porn. I mean, there's a massive problem in itself with
it's porn. It's a circle jerk. Yes. Is another way of putting it.
But honestly, if they could just keep it amongst themselves, that would almost be okay. But that's not absolutely not what's happening. But also, you know, there is a problem with boys. But honestly, porn is such a problem for women. Anyway, I'm following that account that's taking Pornhub to court, or child trafficking. But no, I absolutely get what you're saying. But this is where it starts, isn't it? I mean, that's a massive problem for women in itself. But there's other problems with porn, stuff that I don't think that we did foresee. Like for years, feminists have been saying there's a problem for, you know, porn for women. But this whole thing about, you know, this sort of autogynephilic sort of core that's beginning to be really exposed now is quite worrying, and I'm not sure that we fully understand what's going to happen, but I think it's going to get worse because porn is so there for teenage boys now. I mean, it's just so normal.
And it's changing. It is changing. I think you're right, Helen. It's not that it's actually morphing into something else, because the women are becoming less and less kind of important to it, you know, and in such a way that they're, you know, just outside, in the same way that outside of porn, that women are just being taken out of the equation. And it's like, I don't know.
But it started with porn. Because it's the autogynephilia and porn, and then how it impacts the rest of the world is so fascinating to me. Because it was Genevieve Gluck who was saying, you know, there's this thing in our brains called mirror neurons, where when we see pornography, it's so thrilling and satisfying because we can mirror. We have this ability to see people doing things and to sort of vicariously imagine ourselves in their position. So that's why watching porn feels almost as good as engaging in the sex you're watching. But it's so easy to switch the target to the other member of the porn, to the woman, to be in that role. And then you can start imagining yourself in a whatever you want to call, in this sort of like the person with the vagina role instead of the person with the penis role in the sex that you're watching.
Well, the person,
and then when these guys start imagining, but when these guys, they start fantasizing about being a woman, but it's all on pornographic terms. Their entire concept of what makes them a woman is just paper thin deep. It's literally just like the things that sexually turn them on. The sex signals, you know, the secondary sex characteristics like boobs and long hair and stuff, and tertiary sex characteristics like, I don't know, like the way women dress and things like that, or attitudes and behaviors and demeanors that they consider sexually arousing. That's literally all womanhood means to them. But then when they go out and declare themselves to be literally women in society, now we're literally redefining woman in all of society as what a porn sick teenage boy has decided what a woman is, because he said he's a woman. So it's just like we've gone from like porn to boys to the entire society. Now everybody thinks a woman is just this pornified image of womanhood, you know? Am I making any sense? And it's just
no.
Of course you are. Of course you are.
I guess it's kind of, you know, we've been living with it for so long now that it's
It's almost
and I still think
spell it out because it's so obvious. But yeah.
Well, there's that massive problem, isn't there? Is that the rest of society still have not really heard of autogynephilia, and it's that's the message that we've got to get through. Is that a lot of this, and not, certainly not all of it, but a lot of this is based upon sex, and that's something that they really, really have to try and hide. Which is why society's not really hearing about it. But as soon as you can see that through, when you look at a lot of this through that lens, so clear what's happening.
Yeah, it's not hard, like you were saying. Like us inside, like it just seems like, why would we even say this? We've known this for years. It's just like, we know this. It's the air we breathe. But people outside still don't see it. They still don't see when a middle-aged male says, "Oh, I'm a woman." This is their sex drive operating. This isn't something to do with some affinity with femininity.
That's why they made up the idea of gender. That's why they made up the idea of gender ID. It's not my penis, it's my gender ID.
You're right, it's my magic mystical soul.
Yeah. And it's tied to it's interesting because I think the reason that they do this, and they engage in these linguistic and kind of I guess you could say philosophical shenanigans, is because they are it is shame, and you would think that shame would be something we'd have been able to get rid of to do with sex.
Shame. We just said that, right?
Yeah, but it's coming back. I think the shame expresses itself in a different way. I think these people very much believe that
yes, but for them, woman is shame. For them, women is shame. That being being the submissive one is shameful. It's all about sex and being shamed, isn't it? That's such a lot. That's such a lot.
Like
it's a big
masochism. You can fetishize your own humiliation and shame. You can take all of these feelings, and everything becomes sexualized in some cases. So maybe there's an element of that too. I see that when people are acting like they're so vulnerable, and they're acting like they're just in danger all the time, and it's like you're just fetishizing this sexist idea you have of what it means to be a woman.
Yes, no, absolutely. No, the whole thing, I imagine at some point society will see it. At some point we will get far enough down the line that we will look back and people will write books, and people, the history will show, and people will say, oh yes, look, this is how this happened. And it's amazing that for such a long time there were so many people shouting about it, but everyone was like, I can't hear that.
Well, that tiny little voice of doubt, that what if we're wrong? What if society never gets it? What if society never figures it out and we just end up with sex just disappearing? But that voice gets smaller and smaller every day. And when I hear people like Dee Dee, who's 19, who's just like, all I did was apply the rules I was taught in school. Think for yourself, use critical thinking, think shit through. And she's like, I'm 19 years old. This is all straight up fucking bullshit, the freshness of her voice, not a drop of doubt. She's just like, no, I'm done with this. That renews my sense of like, no, we're going to see this fall apart, Yeah.
Well, sorry, I didn't actually finish my point, but what I was going to say about no, sorry, this was ages ago. But when I was talking about the hippies and Manson, what I was actually leading up to say was that I think things are happening in waves. I think hippies, being a hippie, is basically what this is happening now. These are hippies. The gender. I used to call them gender hippies. But it's not. That's what they are. They're hip. They're like, if everyone's just nice. But you know what I mean? It is the same view of people as essentially so good that we don't have to have safeguarding, that we just have to let it all hang out and everything will be great. Yeah. Exactly. And the brilliant thing about the hippies is that John Lydon came along and appeared on television, and as soon as he snarled, everything was over. The whole hippie movement just went into a big bin, and you know what I mean. And some good things were kept, but most of the crap was dispensed with. And I think that Dee Dee reminds me for me, Dee Dee is John Lydon. And there's going to be more.
The punks have come along and they said, okay, the hippies broke some of the old conservative ideas, but they're idiots and they've gone too far. Let's just take a little bit of their ideas We're still anti-establishment,
was just
but
grass.
we're not idiots.
We'll just take grass, you know. John Lydon was just grass. We'll keep grass, but we'll kill everything else. Because, you know, but like I do think that it is a wave, and I think that, you know, just as you know, the morning of they found Sharon Tate's body, I think there's going to be a similar wake up here where people are looking around at the wreckage. One of the things that really upsets me and really worries me is that the stuff that's said about trans people, that's usually bullshit and not based on anything substantial. For instance, the suicide statistics, that stuff is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they are actually creating a group of people who are going to, like, you know, they proved that, for instance, puberty blockers do not reduce suicidal ideation, and in fact increase suicidal ideation. So they are creating this problem while we're trying to stop it, and they're doing everything they can.
They are. That's true. I absolutely. I completely agree in terms of the attempt. However, I think we can all be thankful that it doesn't seem as if there is an increase in suicide happening. I think that although people are saying it, and they're saying it and saying it and saying it, I'm hopeful.
No, but I'm talking, Helen, about, like, for instance, let's look at Keira Bell. Keira Bell has been amazing, and she's a figurehead, and she's like James Dean in terms of her star quality. She just is so bright and brilliant. Again, Lydon, you know. But the thing is, she has this fight. There are so many girls, so many young girls, and they are going to be left when the wave goes out again.
Oh, they certainly are.
And they're going to say, what the hell was all that about? I really do worry about them. I do think it's kind of a mental health crisis that's just around the
absolutely. And the terror and the absolute horror that will be felt with the realization that you've changed yourself for life and there is no actually going back. You know, your body isn't going to go back to how it was. You know, you can try to get it back to a sort of as much as you can, but that there is some irreversible damage, which is so absolutely negligent of the medical community. I mean, there should be so much blame assigned somewhere for this. Yeah.
Well, I said it the other day on my thing, the Gender GP bunch, Catherine Bristow, you know, Helen Weberly, why aren't they in jail? The Gender GP still has a piece up saying that puberty blockers are reversible. They like that wasn't that completely destroyed in the Keira Bell case. Why aren't they in jail for putting that up? You know,
I can't believe we're living through this, and I can't believe Catherine Bristow, like, just a. Oh,
and Tara Devere in Ireland, you know, like the Tara Devere was introduced on the stage of Londonderry TED Talks. She's the spokesman for Gender GP, as if Gender GP are just the most brilliant organization. You know what I mean? They should be in jail. They should all be in jail. You know.
Oh my God! Something funny just happened in the comments. Wonderful Rebecca said, "Pink is gender abolitionist," and I was like, "Oh my God!" But she meant punk, and she misspoke for a moment there. I was like, "Wow,
pink!" Yeah, that would have been. Hey,
speaking of punk and gender abolitionists and identity, what is the woman's name again? The lead singer of X-Ray Specs.
Polystyrene.
Polystyrene, thank you. There's some documentary coming out about her soon, and I think she'd be a great example of somebody who would not, sadly she's gone, but she wouldn't have put up with this bullshit for one frank second, I don't think.
Yeah. And there's so many people I also think that they were amazing women and they would have been really boring men. Like Patti Smith. Patti Smith would have, my God, would we really need another guy who looks like you know, a scarecrow and takes heroin? You know, it was because Patti Smith was a woman.
There's enough Robert Smiths in the world. It's like
exactly. Yeah. Hey, Arnie, can we see little Arnie? There he is. I really want to get you props so that when you lean back, you can have a giant lollipop or something. I think that would be good.
Like little Lord Artie Fauntleroy.
So listen, we're coming up to 49 minutes. Is there anything else we want to? Oh, should we quickly, Baroness? Should we thank the Lords, Baroness Nicholson, What was the guy's name?
Lord Hunt.
Lord Hunt. Who else was there?
For being grown-ups.
Yeah. For finally being the grown-ups in the room. It was really inspiring. And who would have thought that a bunch of lefties like us would eventually be like, thank you, House of Lords, for existing.
Well, I know. It's, I think we said this last week, but there is something important, isn't it, to take away from the fact that they do not need to be elected. So they cannot be silenced over this in the same way that people who are going to be elected can be. There is no shouting and screaming and saying, look at the transphobia. Oh my God, MPs should block these people. Nobody should be allowed to vote for them. They shouldn't be allowed to stand. They just, they can actually say what they want.
Yeah, I was having a conversation. I have a friend who's a diehard, like old school Tory, total Thatcherite. We were Zooming the other day, and we were talking about the Lords and the situation of what's going on. And, he was really talking about sort of how the House of Lords has changed, the second chamber. And he sold me. He's like, he could understand why as a sort of lefty, I'm like, they're not elected. They're not sort of, what would you call hereditary peers anymore. Now they're sort of chosen as like leaders in their fields. And there's probably some flaws in the choosing, like Ruth Hunt. Isn't she a peer?
Yeah, she's a baroness. Yeah.
But it makes sense. You need like a slow and a fast, because electoral politics is all about fighting and conflict and and exaggeration and hype. And the House of Lords is just very polite and very decent and very thinking things through. And it seems like it's a lot more level-headed, and it does provide balance. And I'm like, damn.
Yes,
I'm turning into a Tory a little bit all of a sudden.
I just like the civil discourse. I like things like my colleague earlier said this, blah 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 blah. Labour saying that about conservatives saying about Labour. I think another thing we need to remember is that when you take away the need to be popular in terms of getting votes, then you get people who say what they really think. Like there's a guy, an absolute God, he's the Labour guy who was looking at Holly Lawford Smith on the news like this. I think it was Holly Lawford. It was someone like that. He looked like he looked like he had manacles that were just stopping him from killing her, and he was horrific about J.K. Rowling. And today he went to that protest about Rise, the shelter that's being shut down, and acted like he's on the same side as the women who are protesting. It was extraordinary, absolute bullshit, playing both sides, and that's what you get when you get into, people who need to vote. They'll just
wasn't it Churchill, who of course we now know is worse than Hitler, according to the woke. What was he said? Democracy is like Ireland, the worst system of government, except for all the others. Oh yeah, of course. But everyone in England's been terrible to Ireland forever. Yeah. Horrible. Still continues to be. But
I still think it was probably on the whole a good thing that he defeated the Nazis. I do think that's probably good. I'd say that when you weigh it up, Nazis
on balance.
Yeah.
Like, but God. But anyway. It's good to have democracy, just pure naked populist politics doesn't work. You really need these balances, these sort of counter weights. So yeah.
But anyway, but they have been. I'm hopeful that maybe people have been drowning for a long time. Maybe I wouldn't go so far as to say that the lifeboats are in the water, but maybe the RNLI have heard the call and are just trying to get the boat down the jetty.
Well, one thing I think. Sorry, Helen. I hope I'm not. I hope this isn't a complete right turn for what you were saying. I think you were saying.
I'm done.
No. But I'm hoping I'm adding to it. But I think that things are changing in terms of, like, did you see the reaction to the Metro hit piece on me about her, and also there was an Irish website called Her as well, coincidentally, that also ran a hit piece on me, and both of them were just ratioed by comments, and there was a lot of new faces in there. People seem to be really paying attention. So I think that even though up until now people have been quiet, I do think people are finding their bravery.
It's happening. And somebody just mentioned, we forgot to talk about Holly Lawford Smith. Somebody in the comments just mentioned her, and what was it called?
her website about academics.
No conflict, they said, or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
you know this. And there was a great piece on Sky News in Australia where she was interviewed, and the woman, the reporter for Sky News who interviewed Holly, it was like a deeply sympathetic interview. It's so rare that a gender critical woman gets to sit in front of a live and be like being like, oh my God, I completely agree with you. And the woman interviewing her was even angrier than she was. She was just like, I'm sick of this.
Oh, I'll have to watch that.
Oh, and at the end, she says, brave woman.
Yeah.
Woman.
Oh, how amazing.
Yeah.
So just
isn't it incredible?
Smith has this website called No Conflict, they said, where women can anonymously post issues they've had with, with the gender identity ideology and presumably perhaps harassment by trans activists or trans people themselves or worse. And somebody posted on Twitter, like, have you seen this website? We have to have it destroyed. And it wasn't like, have you seen this website? Oh my God, there are all these women who are facing problems from trans males.
Yeah,
we need to destroy.
Yeah.
We have to shut them down. Silence them. Just naked. There's women saying they've been abused by men. We need to shut the women up. And that way the abuse doesn't happen. It was shocking. So this was in response to that. Yeah.
Someone just asked, what is ratioed? I don't want this person to be left hanging. Ratioed means that when you put a statement on Twitter and the ratio of likes to replies is much bigger on the replies side because so many people are saying, you're so full of shit, and no one's pressing like. So that's what being ratioed means. But yeah, no, that was really great. And again, it's just, isn't it crazy? We're so grateful just to see actual reality being reported on the news. BBC, the BBC is just continuing to lie about all this stuff and is continuing to groom
Sky News. Sky News. It's always the right. Why is it always the right? It's just like breaks my heart as somebody who still identifies with the left. Very frustrated. It
is very weird, and it's just, I don't know. One thing though I am grateful for is I've grown up a little bit in terms of how I see the right and the left, because I now realize that there are just as many selfish actors within the left as there are on the right. I mean, and also, we used to think progressivism was just about individualism and stuff, and my God, the sheep-like obedience of these people is just really disgusting. So I'm glad it happened in a way that it kind of woke me up a little bit, because I think we won't find our future heroes on the left or the right. We'll find them just the ones who are telling the truth
in the middle.
Yeah, those terms are already becoming. I had a chat with a couple of trans men, one of whom identifies as progressive, one of whom I think usually seems to be pretty on the right or associated with the right. And I just was sharing with them how, like, it's just so nice. I feel like a more whole person now that I'm interacting with people across the political spectrum with respect and understanding. That still means that I don't place myself, therefore, in the middle. I'm not a soup. I'm still on the left myself, but I feel so much more human to interact with people across the political spectrum with respect and understanding and compassion. And I feel like it's just made me such a more enriched human being. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me, I think. It's to shed my extremist leftism,
That said, I wouldn't like it to happen again to me. another round of police visiting and people sending abuse to my home, that I don't need that. But you're right. I feel like we can all apply the stuff we've learned moving forward. Like, for instance, sometimes I see people on our side using terms that I wouldn't really, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but dogpiling sometimes in a way that I just think it's not going to help. It's kind of, it'll definitely show them that, like, for instance, there was a woman who was insulting to James Dreyfus, very different, to James Dreyfus last night on Twitter, a comedian, and I think they were rightly ratioed and rightly called out on it, but I do wish, and maybe Twitter is the problem, but I do wish.
But Twitter is the problem here. Yeah. I mean, I think. I mean, Twitter sort of.
I just want to just engage with these people and just say, can't you understand that women need sex segregated spaces? You do believe this? You just for some reason don't think you do. You know, I'd love to just reach out to people like this, but you know, it's no debate. Is there byword? Listen, we're coming up to an hour. Shall we? I think I better get some food in me and stuff. And
well, what a lovely, nice little extra this has been.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be up for doing this a bit more regularly. I think a second one is a good idea. The Wednesday one seemed good for interviews, and maybe we catch up on a weekend and you know, just have a laugh. Even though this wasn't very funny.
I thought it was pretty fun.
It was fun.
It was great. And I've got my submit a tip to the FBI webpage already.
Good. All right. Well, look, we'll call it a day there. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Guys. Thank you, Helen and Artie. You've been a pleasure as always. And we'll see you all soon. See you Wednesday. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Where did Grady leave? He just left?
He's gone.
Did you do that by accident? Is he coming back? Wait,
yes, because we're still live. Grady's just gone away.
Oh, somebody should text him.
I pressed.
Oh my God. We're